When I heard that knock on my door, I thought it was the mailman. But when I opened it and saw her standing there, the woman my husband left me for, I felt something inside me go cold. She looked small, not the glamorous, confident coworker I had imagined in my nightmares. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. And before I could even find the words, she whispered, "Please." I didn't know where else to go. That moment still replays in my mind like a broken record. But to tell you how I got there, I have to start from the beginning. Back then, my life looked steady, almost peaceful. I was 42, married to Daniel for 15 years. We met when we were both working at the same advertising agency. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who made people laugh without trying too hard. I used to think his smile could fix anything. Our days were quiet but comforting. He'd make coffee every morning before leaving for work. 2 cups, just the way I liked it. 1 spoon of sugar, no cream. Sometimes he'd leave a sticky note by the cup. "Don't forget your keys, sleepyhead." I'd save those notes in a little box by my nightstand. Back then, that was love to me. Small gestures, ordinary moments that built a life. We lived in a modest but cozy house in a suburb outside Atlanta. A little white fence, creaky floors, a maple tree that shed too much in the fall. Daniel liked to call it our forever home. And I believed him. He'd come home late sometimes, meetings, deadlines, client dinners. But he always kissed my forehead, always said, "Just a long day, sweetheart." And I believed that too. I had no reason not to. After all, Daniel wasn't the kind of man who lied. Or, at least, that's what I thought. Looking back now, I can see all the small signs I missed. The way he started using cologne again after years of not caring. The gym membership that appeared out of nowhere. The sudden attention to his wardrobe, shirts neatly pressed, socks matching for once. I remember one evening I joked, "Who are you dressing up for these days?" He chuckled, that easy laugh that used to melt me. "For you, of course. Don't tell me I can't still impress my wife." And I laughed too, because the truth didn't even cross my mind. Then came her name, Tara. He mentioned her casually one night over dinner. "She's new in the office," he said, "sharp kid eager to learn." I smiled, proud of him for mentoring younger staff. He'd always been good at lifting people up. Sometimes he'd come home talking about her ideas, her enthusiasm. "She reminds me of you back when we started," he said once. I didn't think much of it. How could I? It wasn't until later that those words would echo differently in my head. Our anniversary came in April. 15 years of marriage. I remember I bought him a new watch, engraved it with the words, "To forever, M." He forgot. No dinner, no flowers, not even a text. Just a rushed apology that night. "Work's been insane, baby. I'll make it up to you." I smiled, told him it was okay. But I went to bed with tears soaking my pillow. The next few months were a blur of silence and pretending. He started spending weekends at conferences. Late-night calls that ended when I walked into the room. He started turning his phone face down. Little things, tiny fractures that on their own looked harmless, but together, they were the shape of betrayal. One evening, he came home smelling faintly of vanilla perfume, the kind I'd never wear. When I asked, he laughed. "Tara hugged me at work. She got promoted. Don't tell me you're jealous." I forced a smile. Of course not. But something in my chest tightened that night. A whisper, barely a thought. Something isn't right. I tried to shake it off. Tried to be the wife I'd always been, supportive, steady kind. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, laughed at his half-told jokes. But he was slipping away, bit by bit. And I felt it every night, the distance between us growing, even when we sat inches apart on the couch. His hand used to reach for mine. Now it rested on his phone instead. The night I found out, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no confrontation. Just silence. He was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally I never looked, but something, intuition maybe, told me to check. The message read, "I miss you already. Can't wait until Monday. Don't forget our secret spot." Followed by a heart emoji. My hands trembled. I scrolled up. More messages. Weeks worth. Plans. Photos. Laughter. Love. Not between a boss and an employee. Between a man and a woman who thought no one would find out. When he came out of the shower, I was still sitting on the bed, holding his phone. He froze. Didn't even try to explain. Just said quietly, "So, you know." I didn't cry right away. I just nodded. And in that moment, the weight of 15 years pressed down on me. All I could ask was, "Why her?" He looked at me, eyes full of guilt and confusion, and whispered, "I don't know. It just happened." I remember laughing through my tears. Because how does love just happen away from your marriage. He packed a bag that night, said he needed space to figure things out. And just like that, the man I'd built a life with walked out the door. For weeks, I didn't eat much, didn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I kept expecting his car in the driveway, his voice calling, "Honey, I'm home." But it never came. People said time heals everything. It doesn't. It just teaches you how to live with the scar. And I thought the worst was behind me, until the day that knock came at my door. And she stood there, Tara, the woman who'd taken everything. Her lips trembled as she said, "I need your help." I stood there, frozen, staring at her. Tara, the woman who'd broken my marriage, was standing on my porch in the same raincoat I'd once seen hanging in Daniel's car. Her hair was damp from the drizzle, and her hands clutched a small purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I know I have no right to be here," she said softly. But I didn't know who else to turn to. I should have slammed the door right then. Every part of me wanted to. But something about her voice stopped me. It was shaking, small, desperate. So I stepped aside. "Come in." The air inside felt heavy. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen, the faint hum of the fridge, those small domestic sounds that suddenly felt too loud, too cruel. She sat on the edge of the couch, eyes darting around like a child in trouble. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, surprising even myself. She nodded, whispering, "Please." I busied myself in the kitchen, the familiar ritual of boiling water, clinking cups, and stirring sugar grounding me somehow. It's strange how, even in chaos, the body clings to routine. When I returned, she was crying, quietly, hands over her face. "Why are you here, Tara?" I asked finally. She looked up, eyes swollen, cheeks wet. "I'm pregnant." The words hit like thunder. For a moment, the world went silent. No clock, no rain, no breath. I felt my knees weaken, so I sat down across from her. "And Daniel?" I asked, voice trembling. "He knows," she whispered. He's scared. He said he'd talk to you." I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Talk to me? About what?" She hesitated. "He said you're kind. That you'd understand. That you might help me." That's when it sank in, the real reason she was here. Not guilt. Not apology. She came because he sent her. I leaned back, staring at her. "Help you? How exactly does he imagine that?" Tara fumbled with her purse. "He said I could stay with you for a while, until I figure things out. He said you'd know what to do." I stared at her in disbelief. The man who broke my heart now wanted me to shelter his mistress and his unborn child. It was almost poetic. Cruel, but poetic. I took a deep breath. "Tara," I said carefully, "did he tell you what he did to me?" She looked down, ashamed. "He said you two were separated." I laughed again, that cold, unfamiliar laugh that had become my shield. "Separated? Is that what he told you? Did he also tell you he left because of you?" Tara flinched. Tears spilled again. "I didn't mean for this to happen. He said things were over between you." "I didn't know." I cut her off. "Of course you didn't. None of you ever do until it's too late." Silence stretched between us. I should have kicked her out, but I couldn't. There was something almost pitiful about her. Young, naive, sitting in the ruins of my marriage without even realizing it. And maybe, just maybe, part of me needed to look at her. To see what he'd chosen over me. To understand why. She was barely 30. Fresh-faced, delicate, the kind of woman who still believed in promises. And yet she looked exhausted, as if life had already demanded too much. I said softly, "Does he love you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "He said he does. But he hasn't been the same since you found out. He barely looks at me." Ah, there it was. The pattern. The guilt, the distance, the cowardice. Daniel was doing to her exactly what he'd done to me. That night, after she left, I sat in the dark living room long after midnight. Rain drummed softly against the window. I thought of all the years I'd spent believing in that man. Believing that love meant forgiveness, patience, loyalty. And yet here I was, being asked to mother the woman who'd helped destroy me. The irony was almost beautiful in its cruelty. The next morning, I drove to his apartment. He answered the door looking tired, unshaven, like the guilt was finally showing on his face. "Marilyn," he said quietly. "I was going to call you." "Really?" I replied. "Before or after you sent your mistress to my house?" He sighed. "She's scared, okay? She has no one. You've always been good at." I cut him off. "At what?" "Cleaning up your messes." He didn't answer. I walked inside. The place smelled of takeout and cheap air freshener, not the scent of home, just a place people hide in. "You asked her to stay with me." I said, my voice steady but shaking inside. He rubbed his temples. She trusts you. She said you make her feel safe. I thought maybe. You thought maybe I'd mother the woman who helped you betray me. He looked up then, finally, eyes full of something like shame. I didn't mean for it to happen, Marilyn. It just happened. There it was again, it just happened. The anthem of cowards everywhere. I stood there, looking at the man I once thought was my forever. He looked small now, not in size, in soul. Like all the light I once saw in him had been snuffed out by his own choices. I'll help her, I said finally. His head snapped up. You will? Yes, I said. But not for you. And not for her. For that baby. It's not his fault you both made selfish choices. For a moment he almost smiled, until I added, but don't mistake my kindness for forgiveness, Daniel. You lost that the night you lied to me. Then I turned and left. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Because somewhere deep inside, I felt power returning. When he came to me that evening, his eyes were red. I thought maybe guilt had finally reached him. But no. What he said next shattered every bit of peace I had left. He whispered, she's pregnant, and she doesn't trust anyone but you. Can you please help her through this? For a moment, I thought I misheard. Help her? The same woman who tore my marriage apart? The same woman who smiled in my face at office parties while sleeping with my husband behind my back? My hands trembled as I held my coffee mug. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. But he just stood there, ashamed, desperate, and pathetically small. I said, you want me to clean the mess you made? To play nurse to your mistake. He tried to touch my hand. Please, she's scared. She doesn't have family here. You've always been the kind one. That word, kind, hit me hard. Kindness had been my cage. Every time I forgave, every time I looked the other way, I called it love. But what it really was surrender. I looked him in the eyes and said quietly, maybe it's time you learn what it means to be alone. I walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway. The man I once thought I couldn't live without, now just another stranger in my house. But this wasn't the end, because soon she came knocking, and what she said next changed everything. It was a Sunday morning, quiet, peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then came the knock. Soft, hesitant, like guilt wearing perfume. When I opened the door, there she was. The woman who had wrecked my marriage, standing on my porch with tears in her eyes and a hand resting on her belly. For a second, I felt my chest tighten. I didn't know if it was anger or pity. She said softly, I'm sorry. I never meant to fall for him. He told me you were cold, that your marriage was over. Her voice cracked. But now he's gone, and I don't know what to do. I wanted to slam the door, but something in her face stopped me. Fear. The same fear I once felt when I found out the man I loved had betrayed me. I took a deep breath and said, come in. We sat in silence. Two women, different stories, same broken heart. She looked at me and whispered, he's ignoring my calls. He said you'd help me. I almost laughed. Of course he did. The man who couldn't take responsibility now wanted me to carry his shame. I told her calmly, I'll help you, but not for him, for the child, because that baby deserves better than the man who created this mess. Tears streamed down her cheeks. For the first time, I saw her not as the enemy, but as another victim of his lies. As she left, she turned and said, you're stronger than he ever said you were. And in that moment, I realized she was right. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was the woman who survived him. The day I decided to expose him wasn't planned. It wasn't revenge or anger or even hate. It was release. It happened at his company's annual celebration, the same company where he had met her. I was invited as his plus one, though we were already separated. He begged me to come, said it would look good for the company if we appeared civil. I agreed, not for him, but because I needed to close this chapter my way. When I arrived, the air smelled like champagne and false laughter. Everyone looked polished, smiling too wide, pretending their lives were perfect. I could feel the weight of whispers when I entered, the woman whose husband had run off with a coworker. He came to me, placing a fake hand on my shoulder, that same practiced grin he'd worn for years. You look beautiful tonight, he said softly. I smiled back, steady and calm. So do you, I said, especially in your lies. He blinked, confused. I turned toward the small stage, where the company director was giving a speech, praising family values and integrity. Something inside me snapped. When the microphone was passed around for toasts, I stood up. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't shake. I'd like to make a toast, I said, to honesty and the courage to face what we hide. Every eye turned toward me. I continued, slow and deliberate. For those who don't know, my husband here, your brilliant project manager, has been living two lives. One as a husband to me, and one as a liar to her. Gasps filled the room. He froze, his face turning pale. She's pregnant now, I said, my tone sharp but dignified. And he wanted me to help her because, in his words, I'm the only one she trusts. Silence. Heavy. Then whispers began to ripple through the crowd. I looked at him one last time. This isn't about humiliation, I said quietly. This is about truth. And tonight, I'm done hiding his mistakes. I placed my glass down, calm and steady, and walked away. Each step felt like a decade lifting off my shoulders. No tears. No regret. Only freedom. Later that night, my phone rang again. It was him. Begging, yelling, apologizing all at once. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted him one last message. You taught me what betrayal feels like. Now I'll teach our child what dignity looks like. Because yes, I had decided to help her. Not for him, but for the baby. The innocent soul that never asked for this chaos. I found her a place to stay, arranged her doctor visits, and told her one thing only. You owe me nothing. Just raise this child with honesty. That's all. She nodded, tears in her eyes. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. That night, I didn't dream of betrayal or loss. I dreamt of silence and the sound of my own heart healing. After that night, everything changed. Not just for me, but for him. Within a week, whispers turned into headlines inside the office. The story of the perfect couple had crumbled into scandal. His colleagues avoided him, his boss called it a personal matter, but everyone knew. His reputation, the one he had built so carefully over years, started to rot from the inside. He tried damage control. He told people I'd misunderstood, that I was emotional. But in a place where gossip travels faster than truth, the damage was done. The girl, his mistress, couldn't handle the attention either. When she began showing, she quietly resigned and moved out of town. And him? He lost the promotion he'd been chasing. He started calling me more often, sometimes drunk, sometimes angry, sometimes just broken. Once at midnight, he showed up outside my house, the same house he had abandoned, with tears in his eyes and a bouquet of wilted flowers. Please, he said, voice trembling. Can we start again? I made a mistake. I looked at him through the doorway. The man who once looked like power now looked small, fragile. You didn't make a mistake, I said softly. You made a choice. And now you're living with it. He dropped his gaze. There was a silence between us that felt heavier than any argument. I miss you, he whispered. I smiled sadly. You miss who you used to be when you were with me. And then, for the first time since it all began, I closed the door, slowly, gently, but with finality. No screaming, no revenge, just peace. In the weeks that followed, I poured myself into something new, something just mine. I began volunteering at a local women's shelter. Every story I heard, of betrayal, survival, motherhood, reminded me of my own. But instead of reopening wounds, it made me stronger. The girl, the one he cheated with, called me once. She sounded tired, defeated. She said, I don't know how to do this alone. And I told her, you're not alone. But you have to stand up for yourself now. You can't wait for him to save you. She cried, thanked me, and said something I'll never forget. You have every reason to hate me, but you're the only one who's been kind. I didn't respond right away. Because forgiveness isn't a word, it's a slow release of pain. And at that moment, I realized I had already forgiven her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Months passed. He eventually moved out of the city, trying to start over somewhere no one knew him. Sometimes I still got letters, short, regretful ones. He'd write about how he wished things had been different. I never replied, because I'd finally understood something important. Peace doesn't come when someone apologizes. It comes when you stop needing them to. One Sunday morning, I sat in my garden, watching the sunlight slip through the trees. I could hear children laughing in the distance, hers among them. The sound didn't hurt anymore. In fact, it made me smile, because despite everything, life had gone on. And maybe in some strange way, that child, born from betrayal, had become a symbol of hope. A reminder that beauty can still grow from something broken. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, light, clean, unburdened. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's wife or someone's victim. I felt like me. That evening, as I closed my diary, I wrote one last line. I didn't lose a husband. I found myself. And that was the real ending of our story. It's strange how quiet the house feels now. Not empty, just peaceful. There was a time when silence used to scare me. It felt like loneliness. But these days it feels like healing. The mornings are mine again. I brew my coffee slow, the way I like it, strong, with a dash of cinnamon. I open the window, let the sunlight touch my face, and listen to the faint hum of the neighborhood waking up. For the first time in years, I don't rush to check anyone's schedule. No shirts to iron, no lunches to pack, just breath and peace. It took time to get here. Healing isn't a straight road, it's a circle. You walk it over and over until one day, it doesn't hurt to step anymore. After everything that happened, I made a decision. I wouldn't let bitterness define me. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. At first, the brush felt awkward in my hand, like it didn't remember me. But slowly, color found its way back into my world. I painted faces, memories, sunsets, even pain. Because pain, when put on canvas, starts to look like art. I sold my first painting 6 months later. Not for much, but enough to remind me that I was still capable of creating beauty, even after destruction. People often asked if I'd ever forgive him, and I used to think forgiveness meant letting someone back into your heart. Now I know it just means setting yourself free. He reached out again once, on my birthday of all days. A simple message, "I hope you're happy." I typed a reply, then deleted it. Because I didn't need him to know that I was. My peace didn't need his validation. There was someone new, eventually. Not in the dramatic, sweeping way movies show. It started as friendship, quiet, kind, respectful. He knew my story, never tried to fix me, just listened. We'd sit on my porch in the evenings, sharing tea and stories about our lives before the storms. And one night he said something that stayed with me. "You loved deeply. That's not a weakness, it's your strength." For the first time, I believed it. Because love had broken me once, yes. But it had also taught me how to rebuild, stronger, wiser, softer. As for her, the woman my husband left me for, I still hear about her sometimes. She's raising her child alone, working, surviving, learning. We're not friends, but we're not enemies either. In a strange way, she's part of the story that set me free. Once, I saw her at the grocery store. She looked tired, holding a little boy's hand, maybe 3 years old. He had his father's eyes. She noticed me, froze for a second, then smiled, small, cautious, sincere. And I smiled back. No words, no tension, just two women who had both lived through the same storm and come out standing. That night, I sat in bed and thought about everything. The betrayal, the chaos, the loss. And I realized something. Pain doesn't erase love. It transforms it. It makes it wiser, quieter, more selective. It teaches you to love yourself the way you once loved others. So no, I don't hate him. He was a chapter, one that taught me about endings and beginnings. And though I'd never go back, I'm grateful for the lesson. Because sometimes, losing everything you thought you needed is the only way to find who you truly are. The woman I am today doesn't chase closure. She lives it. Every morning she wakes up and chooses peace over chaos, self-respect over guilt, and joy over fear. I once believed that my story ended the day my husband left me. But now I know. That was just where the real story began. I hope someone watching this, someone sitting in their own quiet house, wondering how to start over, hears this and knows, you can. You will. And when you do, the peace you find will be worth every tear you cried. You know, when I look back now, it still amazes me how life has a way of breaking us just to rebuild us differently. There was a time I thought my marriage was my whole world. That if he ever left, everything would fall apart. But what I learned is, sometimes when the person you trusted the most walks away, that's when you finally come home to yourself. I won't lie, it hurt. It broke something deep in me. But pain, if you sit with it long enough, starts to turn into wisdom. I learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what they did. It's about freeing your heart so you can move forward without carrying their mistakes on your back. I learned that dignity will always be more valuable than pity. And I learned that peace, real peace, comes when you stop asking why it happened and start saying thank you that it did. Because now, I live on my own terms. I laugh louder. I sleep better. And when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who didn't just survive betrayal. She grew through it. So to anyone listening right now, if you're holding on to someone who already let go of you, if you're tired of being the only one fighting for love, remember this. Sometimes losing them is the only way to find you. Would you have done what I did? Would you have chosen forgiveness? Or walked away sooner? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones we read. They're the ones we live through.